Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our next instalment of the Leadership Speaker Series. You all know me. My name is Anthony. I'm the Director of Innovation, Industry and Employability. And we've got an amazing speaker for you guys today, and one that I met a few months ago. And when I met Bahram, I thought, you know what, I've got to get him in to speak to the Blue Mountain students, because it's an amazing story. Just to go through a little bit of an introduction, studied at Cornell School of Hotel Administration. You began your career at Four Seasons at the Ritz-Carlton in Chicago back, I won't say back when, because too far back. Had a few positions throughout North America. You then decided to take on a GM's role in 2001 in Saudi Arabia for 4 years, and we're going to talk about the experience in Saudi as well. You then became another rock star in China and opened up the amazing Four Seasons Guangzhou, and was awarded the Hotelier of the Year in 2014. Now you're the general manager and vice president of the flagship Australasian property at Four Seasons Sydney, and I didn't know this. It was the largest Four Seasons in the world in terms of rooms.
Largest and busiest.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah. So
please welcome to our stage General Manager of Four Seasons, Bahram Sepahi, please.
Very good.
Thank you. I want to start the conversation with a quote from your bio. Actually, it caught my eye, and I want to read it out, and then I want you to talk to me about it. It says, "In life, you have to go with a certain amount of faith and take a certain amount of risks. That's how some of the best results come about." Tell me, where does that come from? What does that mean?
Well, look, I mean, in the end, it's all a part of probably most endeavors that we would take on, whether it's in growing up or in education pursuits or careers. And just as much as sometimes you take a leap of faith or a risk when you jump into a relationship, you don't really know. But ultimately, the rewards are, I think, what would drive someone to take a certain risk. And I think in our business, or really on a business platform, you have, of course, learning that comes from taking chances. Reasonably, I would say. This is not about really going and doing things that might be so unfamiliar or so completely strange that maybe you wouldn't have any prediction to make. I think the process of reward comes from that risk-taking, and then at the same time there's learning that comes from mistakes. Of course, there really hardly is anything we do in life, I believe, that doesn't have an element of either could have been better or what could I have. Most people say that keeps me up at night, Anthony. For me, that's what I think about in the morning. I'm getting ready, showering. Oh, you know what? We could have. Oh, that's great. We could have done that a little bit better. Yeah. So I think innovation comes out of risk taking. The reward that, of course, you also take away. So these components you read about, I'm sure you study it, other people tell you about it, but I think are a key ingredient why that quote came to mind at that time.
Yeah, I love it. No, that's a really good place to start today. Let's talk about your journey. Where did your passion for the industry come from? Where was it born?
Well, it's interesting. I had a crazy long sort of story from a teenager, going into a bit of a whirlwind, being moved out from home, and so it wasn't necessarily an early aspiration from, I'd say, middle school, high school years or something like this. My, father was an architect, mother a doctor, so I suppose some of the elements of being attracted to things such as people through my mother caring for people for so many years in her life, and getting us involved as kids, come around, take a look, of course, but she secretly probably wanted me to be a doctor, as she did our, other of my siblings. architect as a father, you know, probably some ingrained feelings about buildings and design, and so these things I think were attractive to me from an industry perspective, but I ended up purely by chance working in a restaurant in a city called Ithaca, New York, which is upstate New York. Happens to be that one of the best, I believe, hotel schools on the planet is there, Cornell.
Yep.
And I really sort of started an interest in it from that early time, working in a restaurant and
Yeah.
liking the people and going from there.
What was your first gig in the restaurant?
Well, that came again on a bit of a leap of faith. I think those are two fellows who were running an operation of restaurant startup. They trusted me to give me a job through a friend's referral.
Yep.
I had no experience, so and they gave me a job to polish the wood and the brass and try to get and sweep the floor. And when they trusted me enough, they gave me a promotion, and that came to a dishwasher. So those were my early endeavors, and I think I was 17 at the time.
Yes, I mean that for me is just a phenomenal piece to basically being your first job as really dishwashing.
Absolutely. First promotion.
First promotion to dishwashing. And when we think about where we want to start our careers, you know, we tend to think, right, I just want to be a general manager. I want to be there. But there's a backstory to it, and I guess that would have shaped you as a leader.
It certainly, I think, is. And today, of course, through educational institutions like yours, the one that ultimately I got involved with to get my degree. Of course, learning is at a different platform, accessibility in terms of not just work study programs or accessibility of learning through platforms such as the digital platform, which back in my time there was hard. It was a different speed. So you learned at a different pace. Therefore, your opportunities were quite different to start. But that doesn't mean today people don't still start at an entry level, as that's where most of our jobs are in the business. And people tend to forget that a little bit.
Why did you stay? Because I mean, dishwashing isn't the most glamorous thing. Why did you stay? What kept you there?
Well, the promotion to the dish machine was sort of, for me at that time, I thought, wow, what a cool thing. They actually trust me to run this thing. And it happened to be that in that restaurant, we weren't open yet, so the chef was doing his test cooking, and so I was helping him here and there, and of course took an interest from there in the whole world of culinary, and I thought that was really fantastic, and started basically stepping into the world of food and beverage because from that early time. It was really something I thought I had a passion for sure. And the people were just so cool, and they were exciting, they were crazy, and we had lots of fun. They actually bring me beers back to the dish machine, when we were really, going crazy, and everybody was going right out. So I thought, wow, what a cool bunch of guys they're giving. And in the U.S. at that time, you shouldn't have had a beer at 17. So, but they were a crazy bunch, and I think that's what in our business tends to fuel often what keeps you going is, do you like the people that you're associating with, and that keeps regenerating fuel.
Oh, look, I couldn't agree more. It is a fun industry to work in. It's hard, but there's definitely a lot of fun, and the people that you meet are amazing. So mum and dad were professionals,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden their son, their pride and joy, is now in a restaurant washing dishes. I mean, how did that go down?
They had no clue. I think at the time, now, of course, I was also displaced in a way because there was turmoil in my country, and there was a revolution brewing, so they, I guess, sent me out with my suitcase and yearbooks in hand, and I left at that age and really didn't understand what they understood.
Yep.
And then I've never been back. That was the story of what happened circumstantially, but as a result of being fortunate to find something that was passionate for me, and people trusted me, helped me out. I ended up finding an industry that I thought, well, gee, how cool, is it to be in this industry? Of course, for them, when I tried to explain it to them, what are you doing exactly? They didn't know. To them, it was three things. You had to become a doctor, an architect, or an engineer. They didn't really, but look, after some time watching, my ability to really grow in that field, I think made them ultimately not just understand, they were quite proud.
What was your first role in a hotel?
Well, I think if I were to recall back, I had, of course, a lot of, need for money as well, like most of us do, because revolution happened in my country. I got cut off financially, so I had to work multiple jobs whilst I tried to pursue studies.
Yep.
So I started working, night audit in a small motor inn kind of thing.
Wow.
And then ultimately started working at the hotel that was associated with the school as well. And then started cooking banquets at a Sheraton. So it was really doing a semi-full-time job and 2 part-time jobs and going to school. So it was
How did you manage?
quite wild.
How did you manage? Like, really?
Well, I wouldn't lie to you and say that it didn't have an impact on my grades, because it certainly did. But I think, look, much part of it was need-based, because
of course,
obviously I had to pay my way, and when you do have a strong enough need to do something or a desire to do something, of course you get it done. But lots of hard hours, not just long hours, but hard hours, because you get tired. You have to work from, one job. You're in cooking whites. You got to go change, clean up, go work night audit. So all of these things are part of what our industry demands. But at that time, it was great learning for me as well. So that kept me going.
And how did that shape you? I mean, looking back, how did that shape you as a manager and as a leader, really? I mean, those experiences early on.
Well, from early on, and that role into management for me came while I was studying at a hotel school, because then I was able to make proposals to the hotel that the school also operated part of the day. It was basically a union-run operation during the day, but in the evenings and weekends it was student-run with members of management who would apply and get a job with experience. So I was able to really get my first managerial role in the Statler Inn, which is associated with our school, and worked really through both the food and beverage side of the business and then also on the room side. So I was very fortunate to be able to build on both sides of our industry when it comes to operations. And that helped me keep growing in management at that hotel initially.
So food and beverage, rooms, which one did you prefer at the time?
Well, my passion was in F&B for sure. Mainly because, I just thought those people are nuts. And the rooms people, I wouldn't call them boring, but they were much more, matter of fact, straight, procedural. F&B, takes care of 1,000 things by the hour, and so
it was the free beer, wasn't it? Just admit it.
It's the free beer, which then evolved into wine, and, passion for wines, and obviously for those of you who enjoy food and wine and the environment around food and beverage world, it is something inherent that really excites you. So for me, that remains to today, even though my experience is both sides of the business.
So what happened after that? What came next? You graduated from school?
Graduated, I did interviews as most the hospitality program graduates would do for companies who would come and make presentations. And I think, at the time I was fortunate enough, because of the experience I had, that I was getting job offers even in the middle of the interviews. People of course do their due diligence, recruiters, to see, okay, who do they want to try to get first. And Four Seasons was there as well, but I chose not to go with them coming out of those interviews because
Oh, wow.
I heard from them, well, you come, we have a program, and it'll be either, up to 18 months, and then perhaps you do well, you become an assistant manager, and I thought that was an eternity. I thought, what are they talking about?
I want to be a manager now, guys.
I'm already a
Yeah.
manager, why would I do that? And so I took a job in another group, a larger hotel group, as a general management trainee. They had a program that had selection of about 12 hospitality graduates from all the top schools in the nation.
Yep.
And into this program that was a fast-track general manager trainee program. So I took that role and packed up my things and moved out to LA and started at a hotel with them it was basically an 18-month program as well, but on a track to become an assistant division head and and beyond.
What did you learn most about that 18 months experience?
Well, it really was actually quite intense from a platform of needing to be self-reliant because I had to make sure that I kept myself on track.
Yep.
So the trust that a company puts in you as an individual, and those of you who look at training programs like manager and training programs or the like, it's really not about a company having a framework and then you march through it and you do some things and at the end you come out. I ask that question of managers in training often, or candidates we interview, both internally at hotel schools. What do you define should happen when you finish your program? And they say, well, I should learn this, I should learn that. I say, yeah, but what should you be? What is the end game? And the end game is quite simple. It's you need to come out of that program and be a manager. You can look at it that simply.
Yep.
So, and I think I learned early on that, wow, hold on a minute, that's up to me.
Absolutely.
And they're giving me that roadway.
Yep.
It's about whether I choose to go through it confidently and get to the end game or not. So it was a very important element that I learned. Despite, of course, there was a lot of learning. You worked in the front office, you go to marketing, you go to F&B,
Yep.
you have that learning as well.
Look, I mean, for managers, that's probably the hardest part, to transition out of being operational to all of a sudden now I've got to lead people and I've got to manage, and getting your head around that. It's not an easy transition to make.
It isn't, and in the end, I think for those of you who are looking at operations management, of course, as an entry level or other elements, the bottom line is that the people skills and the demand of you on people abilities for interaction, for communication, for influencing, that never changes really fundamentally. What changes is, as I mentioned, that the tasks and the technical side. I mean, you may be in the early years, you will be asked to be able to be competent on a lot of technical things. But over time and career progression, the technical side goes away. If you ask me today to check Anthony in, God help him, with systems and codes and technicalities. I have a login code, by the way. But the realities are that's no longer my role. When you think about, as you were saying, the parts that have to become critical thinking elements of a job, that will come with more and more advancement in management. So, and less technical.
So you finish your 18 months. You're now a manager in your eyes, and I guess in their eyes as well. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have graduated you from the program.
That's right, and of course they had a need. And they decided to move me to Chicago, and they said, "Look, you're going there, and we're going to fast track you a little bit. You have a few months on the ground, and then we're going to make you assistant director of food and beverage for that hotel."
Wow.
And I said, exactly.
Wow.
I said, wow.
Yeah.
And you get a little bit. I think I was 23 at the time, or 24, and I said, okay. Great, and then I stepped back, and I had a girlfriend at the time in LA, and I was like, geez, I don't really want to leave. I mean, why would I want to do that? And suppose, like many who come to Sydney or Australia, people really don't ever want to leave. Those of you who are not from here, I'm sure you shake your head, but ultimately you have to go. So I fought like crazy to get another job or go do something else, and I was spinning. But ultimately, I went and became an assistant director of food and beverage at what I would call would be a first-class hotel. It wasn't a luxury hotel, I would say, in that chain. And then ultimately became F&B director at the hotel.
Yeah, right.
At the age of 25, which was a moment of reflection for sure. I can certainly speak about that, but yeah, so that was the 18 months turned into all of a sudden a leap after they promoted me.
It's amazing how many doors those kinds of programs actually do open. And I think it's important for anyone in the industry to also keep an eye out on some of those graduate programs.
It does, Anthony. And the reality is you have to decide, I think, and for me, the moment of realization, I suppose, that I mentioned is I really wasn't happy with what that was all about. You know, it was a massive company in a way. It was a big job. It wasn't that I wasn't doing well, but I was 25. I was like, wow, gee, really? And there were elements of quality that I missed from my prior associations. So that's when I, ironically, went and there was an opportunity, and I went back and talked to Four Seasons. And I ended up taking a step back, actually, to a director of guest services, if you will, managing into the rooms operation, and joined that company, which is a bit odd. It happened to be the Ritz-Carlton in Chicago, which most people puzzled by, but we were managing that hotel. It was a long story, but the founder of Ritz-Carlton essentially got asked to leave by the owner, powerful owners of the building.
Yep.
And the only way he would leave was if they signed an agreement that they could never change the name.
To keep the name.
They could never take the lion head off from the building and you know, all of that.
Is it still a Ritz-Carlton?
It remains a Ritz-Carlton.
Wow.
We don't manage it anymore. We managed it for 35 years, I think. But yeah, it was quite odd because it was the Ritz-Carlton Chicago at Four Seasons.
Managed
hotel.
by Four Seasons. Jeez.
And we ultimately opened another hotel with the same developer. So there is a Four Seasons Chicago, and we're no longer at that property.
Hard-hitting question. Did the girlfriend from LA come with you to Chicago?
She didn't.
She didn't?
She didn't.
Oh.
She didn't, which, you
What
know.
is better to love and lost than to have never loved at all?
It is,
all
it
that?
is, yeah. and her red convertible sports car.
Oh, no.
Yeah, no, I left that behind, unfortunately, you know, and of course we kept in touch and so forth, but it, you know, as many of us have experienced, long-term relationships become tougher. So yeah, so that didn't, but that's led me to lots of other wonderful things.
Well, there you go.
Including being married and 4 kids and all that.
There you go. There's a happy ending there.
Absolutely, yeah.
So guest services, Four Seasons, new company, new culture. What was the transition like into Four Seasons?
It was transformational.
Yeah.
For me, it was a matter of stepping back into smaller but better. Focus on things that resonated with me more. Much of it being around quality, quality of people, top of the list, quality of elements of, you know, what is it we were talking about, how is it we were going to come together and do things, that I like those people, that kind of thing, and I genuinely did. And I think the realities of that were, for me, an easy then decision to say, you know what, I'm at executive level, but I'm 25, but what does that matter? I will gladly make that move. And couldn't have been happier. At the time, that was really also, I would say, one of the top performing hotels in the world.
Wow.
Especially when it came to management and expertise and grooming people. It was quite exceptional. And for us as a company, many of our leaders came out of that hotel.
Out of that property.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And you had a couple more stops along the way. You're in Dallas after that, and then Washington.
I ended up, oddly enough, and this is a lesson learned. So I ended up leaving that hotel 2 years later, and leaving Four Seasons for a period of time, and I moved to New York, and that was purely for personal reasons. So sometimes
another sports car.
Another
No?
sports car. Yeah. You know, I know. I was crazy back then. I had a motorcycle. I had lots of.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, those times. Those you guys don't experience those things, I'm sure. Those
No.
are the ages of motorcycles and waterbeds. And so I left all that behind, probably for good sanity reasons, and went. But interesting enough, it was also about two leaders who left at the time to take on an exciting project in Manhattan with a different company called Nikko, a Japanese company, which many of you probably know. Nikko International had massive growth plans at the time. It's a division of Japan Airlines, and they were growing in the United States. And the two people, the gentleman who had hired me at the hotel and another, one of my bosses had moved to that hotel, take on a renovation plan for a legacy hotel in Manhattan called the Essex House Hotel. So I moved with that, really a job intent to grow with them and grow, and stayed with that company for quite a few years, about 8 years actually. Yeah.
I want to talk about your journey into general management, and I guess where was your first post as a, if you want to call it a hotel manager or a GM?
Well, after I rejoined Four Seasons, which came the move to Dallas that you mentioned, Anthony, and that was when, at that point, I had already had experiences closing a hotel, which we did in New York. We closed that hotel for a complete renovation, and then moved from there to Atlanta, Georgia, where I helped open a hotel for Nikko. That's where I met my wife, and we, ended up, of course, then after marriage, we moved back to New York with the same company.
Wow.
So those were those years, and yet there was a yearning to go back to, once again, some of you may ultimately, I think, feel this as you grow in your endeavors. To me, it was really, truly about recognizing that the people that I always respected in a far different and greater way, and I liked working with prior and so on, were still all at Four Seasons. So even though I only worked with Four Seasons for 2 years. So at that time then we took the decision to take an opportunity with Four Seasons in, at this point I was director of rooms in New York, and took a similar job in Texas for Four Seasons in Dallas.
It's phenomenal. Like, having worked with the team at Four Seasons here in Sydney, it's the same people that have been there since I started working with them nearly 10 years ago.
Yeah.
What is it about the culture?
Well, it's about a few things, but and I think part of that comes back to sort of finish that question about, well, how did then for me opportunities come with that into general management and so forth, but. It was through the growth with Four Seasons that I ultimately took a role with GM post overseas, which was my first assignment with Four Seasons out of the country. And again, that was about taking risk, and we can talk more about that. But when they felt that I was ready to be promoted, we had left Texas at that time. We moved to Washington, and I was a hotel manager in Washington, D.C., and the company then asked me to go open a hotel as GM in Saudi Arabia. So, but look, I mean, the people, coming back to that, I think really when you think about the history, whether it's at a location like here in Sydney, it's been around for many, many, many years. And, the faces and the characters and the trust that you end up building with that kind of experience on the internal side of a company, then helps you as well take what I mentioned earlier, is take risks. For us, for example, to pick up and go was quite a bit of a leap of faith, to say, well, we'll go into a new country, we don't know anybody, I'll be the first person there, there's nothing there other than the shell of a building, and it happens to be a culture and an environment which we are complete foreigners in. So, of course, you need to have then faith and trust in who you're working with.
Yeah.
Otherwise, then it becomes quite difficult. So, and I think that's what, within this, at least fortunate that we are, in our company, is a very, very strong core group of people. And that's quite important as you look at your future with companies that you'll look at.
So you're talking Saudi now, where you're in Saudi Arabia. So this is I mean, Saudi is Saudi. So forget the 50-degree heat and the sandstorms, but then you've also got political unrest, an interesting regime. As a having worked in the West, now going into the Middle East, talk to us about the culture shock, or how you kind of settled in.
Well, it was more of a shock than we had ever hoped for, because of what happened in the world at the time. But because we moved, at the time we had 3 young children, and my wife was expecting 4th, so we were in our own sort of shock and awe, literally, because that's what came after we moved. This shock and awe campaign, military campaign. But we moved, and that was in June of 2001. That's as bad as flying into the heart of a hurricane. And because in September the world fell apart with the terrible events of September 11th, and we were literally sitting in the middle of the hornet's nest, quite frankly, going into a bit of a, I guess, reflection on, oh my goodness, what now? So then became both a personal set of questions and things to solve, but also on the professional level, how do you continue building, then a team and a business and ramping up in that climate, which I think for everyone at the time was just a terrible time.
So how do you do that? How do you balance, oh my God, my family, safety, security? We all learn about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So you've got all that in the back of your mind, but then you've also got a hotel to run.
Right, and
it's your first GM's?
First
GM's
role. Assignment, pre-opening tasks, so you're learning literally rewinds back to, okay, well, what now? So of course you need a huge support structure to fall back on when it comes to everything from developing marketing materials and strategies to procurement to financial planning for budgets and of course the people side and the human resources development side, where you literally, when you're first person, you're by yourself, and then it starts quite simple technology-wise. Learn how to connect a Wi-Fi router or internet. And you see how you don't have an IT department. So you start really basically from scratch. And of course, for us personally, it was quite a difficult time because with expecting a child, we even thought about relocate the family back. But look, we adapted, and I think that's part of what is required. And we did that for almost 3 years, which until it really was quite untenable. We went through quite a bit of difficult security problems in the country, as probably as you would know, I'm sure, and some will remember. And you had to make sure you adapted. I did that. We were fortunate enough to have confined living in compounds and so forth. So when it got quite tough, we were still of some comfort that things were okay. But yeah, it became quite taxing until we decided to make a change. Ultimately, I moved the family out to Dubai, whereby so I commuted literally every weekend because security for them became a big problem.
With that in mind, I want to talk about when leaders first start a role, or when a president or a prime minister starts a role, they kind of think about these first 90 days, first 100 days. Did you plan for your first 90 days? Did you have a plan before you went in and said, right, this is what I'm going to do? Or did you go in there and said, just going to wing it?
Well, it I would say was probably there was a bit of winging it in there because you just really don't know. That's where the element of ambiguity for those who handle it poorly, I would say, in life, and could literally crush you if you don't deal with ambiguity well, or painting a canvas, if you will. Not that I'm a good painter, I'm a terrible painter. But you do literally have to start painting a picture. And of course, you need to fall back on resources. So there was a plan. It wasn't as if there wasn't. And typically in our business, developers, of course, have, they employ millions of dollars in this direction, where hiring consultants and resources to help. And we have our own mechanisms for getting a business platform together. So I knew that stuff was there, but I had to, my learning curve, went as if I had gone back, I was a university graduate, but I thought I'd gone back to high school,
Wow.
So the learning accelerates,
Yep.
and I think the importance for us was, for me personally and professionally, was to be patient through that process, have trust and confidence in the people I worked with, particularly my company, and build it literally one piece at a time. The elements of the global affairs and the local issues didn't help. I thought I had a 90-day plan all figured out. As I mentioned, we arrived there in June, and then July and August, and then September 11th happened. So all good plans literally went
went out the window,
up,
really.
literally.
Gosh.
Yeah.
So your family's in Dubai. You're kind of commuting backwards and forwards. You then get an opportunity to get out of the Middle East.
Right. I mean, we had at the time, of course, I had opened a hotel in Saudi. The hotel was operating and growing quite well.
And this is your second opening now?
No, in Riyadh we opened a hotel, but the Dubai job would have been a second opening,
Yep.
for sure. And by the way, you when I said you adapt, September 11th was bad enough, but we opened a hotel in February of 2012.
Wow.
So 2002. Sorry. I get my decades missed. You guys don't have to worry
What's
about
a decade
that
here and
problem of,
there?
missing decades and making that mistake. I do. Even Anthony doesn't have to worry about screwing up with decades. But yeah, I get 2002 versus 12 versus 92.
Hey, to me, it's still 1990. It's fine.
Enjoy it while it lasts. But of course, 2002, we opened a hotel, and in February, in March, George Bush decided to, send his army
Send the
up
troops
through
in.
and the campaign, which would have been Desert Storm. Maybe
Desert
at the
Storm,
time.
yeah.
So.
And are you thinking, just give me a break? I need a break here.
It's brand new open business. You're looking for occupancy. You're looking for, and then British Airways. So that happened in February. March, the war began. April, SARS hit the world.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Anybody know what SARS is?
Yeah.
You all know it. The single largest impact economically for us as a company, probably still on record, was that event.
Wow.
All the terrorism in the world, the things that happened, global financial crisis, all that. SARS singularly impacted us, just so you can put that in perspective. So that happened in April. In May, the Al-Qaeda decided in our city, in Riyadh, to start blowing everything up, including trying to blow most of us up. And we had a war, that had happened already, and the remnants of that. We had knockout punches left and right. But nevertheless, we got the business going, and once it had settled very, very favorably, then I was then asked to go to Dubai to start our project of opening our hotel in, which was in Festival City at the time. Which is another longer story. But at that point is when I also took on the role of regional vice president for the Middle East. And we spent about 4 years in Dubai.
What's a regional vice president?
So the duties for me then went beyond a single property and single location to take on support and working with general managers in, at that time, the Middle East region was 5 countries for me, which would have been including of Saudi Arabia, of course Dubai, Qatar, our hotel in Doha, and Damascus in Syria, as well as Jordan, Amman. So working with each general manager and their team and the ownership groups on managing their business. So that is a brief of what a regional VP operationally does and business management, and then of course stepping up really partially then as a senior manager of the company, working on company strategic planning, budget management on a global level. So really a corporate hat of about 15%, and then regionally about 40%, and the rest on a local level.
So you're a rock star in the Middle East now. You've kicked these amazing goals for 4 seasons. Then I think we're next, and it's China.
Well, we grew to 7 properties in the Middle East, which when I arrived we had 1. Oddly enough, when I went to China and now have left China, we went from 1 hotel to 7. I don't know that this is my number magically. I don't know. And here in Australia, I'm not sure we will go to 7 properties. But
what are you at the moment?
1.
1. Okay.
So it's the same formula.
There you go.
But we did, in fact, I went, the reason why I went to China was yet another global event. So be prepared for all of those that will affect you in your careers. But our project was a 3-phase project in Dubai. It had a golf club, which is a championship golf operation, which we opened, the 4 Seasons Golf Club. And phase 2 was the hotel, and phase 3 were residential around the golf course. After the golf club operation opened and we were underway with the hotel development and in the construction mode, the worldwide credit crisis happened. So again, and that was basically initially a stop button for everything, as you probably have studied or learned or lived through it, and then there was a reset button. So beyond the stopping, standing still, looking, of course, our development then came under question because the developer, it was a typical Dubai fantasy master plan, of which most come to reality, and yet he had 7 hotels under development just in his property, 2 of which had opened, 2 intercontinental IHG products, an Intercon and a Holiday Inn, and then he was building 4 Seasons and a W, and he had 3 other hotels under development as well. And retail and
of course,
shopping,
all the bells and whistles,
everything, marina. But he had to stop, and ultimately we chose to exit that project. So I had to deflag that operation, and 300 employees, and it was very hard.
That's challenging.
Some things you'll do in your business life and career which are harder or hardest. I think for me that was probably the hardest thing I've ever done, career-wise. And deflagging a business and handing it over because you feel like you're handing over 300 of your family members. So that for us in a way became a blessing. I moved to China to take on a flagship hotel for us in South China, and as part of our major growth plan for China. So we moved to Guangzhou. And in Dubai, the story continued to be a blessing. I'd already met one of the rulers, one of his many sons, who then had a project that he wanted to develop. Today, that is the Jumeirah Beach 4 Seasons Resort.
Wow.
And we have since opened a 2nd hotel with them in Dubai. So in the end, it was a very positive story for Dubai.
It worked out well. Tell us about being awarded the 2014 Hotelier of the Year.
Well,
where did that come from?
Pure honor, I think. I think any time, I believe, we work with so many wonderful organizations within the hospitality industry and or supportive of the hospitality industry that do these amazing things. In this case, the Hotelier Awards operates in different regions, and they work with a few partners to simply recognize people in the industry at all levels. And they had begun this for the Greater China region. I was very fortunate to be selected at that time. I think as the I think I was the first to receive this award. So, and but they do an amazing job of recognition, and I think that's what it's about. It's what we aspire to do every day, and whether it's somebody's birthday, whether it's somebody's promotion, or somebody who exceeded their goals, or what have you. And that's what they do, and I was very honored, and that's what it truly meant for me.
How's your leadership style evolved over from the time that you started to where you are now? What's the evolution? How's it all changed?
Well, I don't ride motorcycles anymore, and
besides
try
that,
to
chase pretty girls in red
chase pretty
convertibles.
girls, in that sense, or have beers at the dish machine. But I still like to have fun from a connectivity standpoint with people. Be able to enjoy really having a part in their exciting life and careers, and that's on a day-to-day basis. And of course, the reason we are there together is obviously because of our guests and our clients, our customers. And for me, the transformation that as a leader I've had to make, because you will read, study many things. People will tell you about leadership. You will on your own do quite a bit of research. And to me, I don't believe any leader is born with all of those skills ever. I don't care if they were the greatest leader in history. They all would have had to evolve. And I think for me, leadership has become an evolution of my skills, my character and personality, and I think those things are, yes, ingrained in us from early years, and both from the environment we grow up in, parenting, family members, mentors, but it's ultimately about what we choose to believe is important. So leadership comes in so many forms. So I think for me, I've learned quite a bit about these different elements of leadership, and hold on to, at least in our company environment at Four Seasons, to what we believe are the most important elements in the hospitality industry for leadership. I teach that 3 times a year to management groups that are internally being developed, and the message is always the same, that it is an evolutionary process. So be mindful of that. Somebody ever tells you, oh, you're not a good leader. Well, just say, you know what, I think you're right, but I'm learning about where I can continue to grow as a leader. To me today, that remains true. I wouldn't tell you today I'm a leader that has completely rounded out. Still work in progress.
How do you influence culture? And I guess Four Seasons has got its own culture, but how do you kind of give your bit of Bahram flavor onto culture wherever you go? Well,
I think if you look at the people culture element for us in our company, which many call it human resources, they call it personnel, whatever you want to call it. But it's truly holding on at the core to a set of beliefs that ultimately should resonate with a group of people that in our view and my view certainly should be like-minded. That comes in the early stages when we meet people. Somebody comes and says, or you come tomorrow and say, hey, I want to join. Say, okay, well, tell me more about that. Tell me what's happening. I ask the question, what's going on in your head? Why is this important to you? And you start getting a feel for whether people are like-minded and whether they would, many people say, well, I don't know if I'll fit into the culture. Well, the first question comes, what's important to you, and what do you understand is important to the company you're talking to, and whether that resonates. And I think that common understanding helps then be able to take on, even if somebody doesn't, wouldn't naturally understand, well, what is the culture of this company, whether it's a Four Seasons or Ritz-Carlton or whether it's HSBC. The reality is every company has core values and beliefs, and those are the things they operate together with when they go about as hopefully, if you're going to stay in the service industry, what would be most meaningful when it comes to human behavior and taking care of each other. This is a core part of our values, but ultimately culture evolves as well. It's not that Four Seasons came up with a Coca-Cola formula. Even Coca-Cola will tell you
that's evolved.
That, you know, we have a secret. I lived in Atlanta, so I know, and I married a girl whose father was a Coca-Cola VP, and don't drink anything else in our house than Coke. And the secret formula is in a safe in downtown Atlanta, and even that secret formula, I suspect, has evolved.
Yeah.
Right. So keep that in mind when you face learning about culture and then adapting to it.
My last question before I open it up to the audience. Your advice to these guys as leadership students and future leaders of the industry, your advice on surviving the industry and creating a sustainable and long career.
Wow. Okay, there's got to be a kit. You know, there isn't one pill that you could take every time you know, adversity comes up. But be honest with yourself first. You know, and people look at you and say, "Hey, be honest with me." You know, it's sort of make sure you're honest with yourself first. You know, I think in this business, if you're not at that point on any issue, it could be about, you know, transferring to another role, or it could be about a performance thing somebody's trying to give you advice on, or what have you. If you don't do that self-check and face it honestly, number one, by the way, experienced managers who work with you will know. They will know.
Yeah.
You know, but it's more about what's going to keep you happy. I think if the best advice I can give you is be honest with yourself about the work you're doing. If you're not happy, you know, in something, is like, you know what, don't be shy to be confident enough to bring that forward honestly and say, hey, look, hey, I'm a good person. I want to do good things, but maybe this isn't it. What else? That could be about career and job decisions or what have you. But it also could be about somebody looking you straight in the eye. You know, our business is a people business, and it's often about feedback, right? You know, whether it's our guests giving us feedback or whether it's a colleague, right, in the back giving you feedback. Hey, you know, I didn't like the way, you know, what's going on. And, you know, make sure, don't build a wall around yourself. I think when you're most sincere, when you're vulnerable, number one, people are going to appreciate you more, afford you more opportunity, and you're also going to feel better about what you're doing, I think.
Amazing. Really, really, really great advice. I'm going to open it up to the audience if you've got any questions. Yes.
So I have a question about the
Stand up.
overcoming the mistake and misfortune condition, because you said before you come to the Middle East and then suddenly there is a misfortune condition as well in that years. So I was a little bit interested in these questions. So I want to ask you, what is the best advice to turn back from mistake and misfortune condition, and then how to be able to reach the success from it?
Yeah.
It's a big question. Big question.
You know, and that was a, you know, oh my God, what have we done moment.
Yeah.
For sure. Especially, you know, when you have more responsibility than just yourself, right? You know, over a partner or family. Or
We've got 3.5 kids.
You know, in this case, a large family. So, you know, mistakes can appear to you in different shapes, different sizes, different weights, you know, and some might feel like they're crushing, you know. And so I think how you deal with it will also be somewhat personal. I suppose, like many have taught us, you know, you have many great leaders teaching you here and educators.
Yeah.
You know, ultimately, if you keep making mistakes that are very similar, then you really are probably either you know, you're not taking enough time to step back, really step back and say, well, okay, hang on a minute. You know, do I really want this to keep happening? And then trying to change either yourself or the environment or whatever, because you're recognizing that, look, that's a mistake. So I think there are different weights, shapes, and sizes. You know, hopefully you avoid big mistakes, and mostly those are things that can't be undone.
Great.
Those are things that can't be undone. So, and I often advise, you know, managers of that, or when they're faced with a decision, or, you know, they come to me and they're not presenting a solution, you know, they're just bringing information, and I'm sitting there, okay, what's preventing you from making a recommendation?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to make a mistake. Okay, well, let's work through that. If you make a recommendation and I say, God bless, let's do it, and it turns out to be a mistake, can this be undone? And they think, said, well, yes, I think, well, we could do this. I said, okay, what are you afraid of? Let's do it.
Yep.
But, and that could be on a personal level, I think, as well. Just be mindful of making mistakes about things that either you're just not prepared enough to take that risk, or whatever, that you know can't be undone, if that makes sense, right?
Comes back to your risk point very, very early on, is being able to take calculated risks and be able to say, yep, I should do this, or no, let's go another way.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Any other questions? Yes?
I was just wondering if you had any plans for your future career, or if you're happy at the moment where you are.
Wow.
That's the what's next question.
Love her, she's great.
Good question.
Well, look, I mean, for me, it's been a, you know, incredible career. If I stopped tomorrow, I would say, you know, that's just absolutely, you know, perfect. I couldn't stop tomorrow because I put 4 kids through college. That's not going to happen. And, you know, could I continue in a career as a you know, regional VP and be happy? Absolutely. Would I aspire to do more? Absolutely. I think that again comes down to what I feel today about myself and what I think I'm capable of in supporting others and what they need to do within my company. But of course, you know, look, companies, and I have to be realistic as well, companies you know, have, like any major organization, or it's a pyramid structure, so opportunities grow to be narrower. I think as much as we're a global company, you know, we have, at my level, I think 19 people at this level worldwide. The next position above me, there was only 3 jobs, so there are only 3 positions, which are area presidents and then a global president. So operationally for me, look, I'm very happy with the group of people I work with. I've been with them now 22 years this time versus the last time. So as long as I continue to be happy, I will stay with it. You know, if somebody comes tomorrow and says, look, we want you to be, you know, president, which happens, by the way. Most of you will get calls. I get calls constantly. Not every day, but I get calls when it's appropriate position. And it's not so easy to say, well, gee, I'll get a title and I'll get another $100,000, whatever it is. You know, it's about, for me, are you happy, as you just asked me? And I am happy as long as that continues. My career's just right. Yeah. Powerful question.
Bahram, amazing story, amazing journey. I mean, thank you so much for coming in today and sharing that with us. I think all of us are a little bit more enlightened and inspired by it. Ladies and gentlemen, can I ask you to put your hands together once more for Bahram?
Very, very thoughtful, very kind. And I told Anthony and a few of your colleagues when I came that I felt like a celebrity, and my picture was on the screen, and I was like, so, but very, very appreciative to be able to talk to you, all of you. So good luck in everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That was fantastic.